A pregnant horse refuses to give birth, no matter what her owner tries. When the vet finally performs an ultrasound, everyone is stunned by what they see. It's not just about the pregnancy. It's about a heartbreaking secret buried in the horse's past that no one could have predicted. Why is this horse holding back? And how far will her owner and the vet go to save her and her unborn foal? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The morning mist hung low over the training arena as Lena Brown held her phone steady, recording Bella's graceful movements. The mare's hooves kicked up small clouds of dust with each perfectly timed step, her muscles rippling beneath her gleaming chestnut coat. "That's it, girl. Show them what you've got," Lena whispered, zooming in on Bella's fluid pirouette. The mare moved with the elegance of a dancer, each movement precise and controlled. The rising sun cast a golden glow across the arena, making Bella's coat shimmer like polished copper. Lena's heart swelled with pride, but her stomach churned with anxiety. This video needed to impress her sponsors. After 3 failed business ventures and 2 disappointing competition seasons, she couldn't afford another setback. Later that morning, Lena sat across from Dr. Matthews, the region's most respected horse breeder. His office smelled of leather and coffee, and his desk was covered with photos of prize-winning horses. "The tests are positive, Doctor," Matthews said, sliding the results across his desk. "The breeding was successful. Congratulations, Lena. Bella is carrying what could be a very special foal." Lena's hands trembled as she studied the paperwork. With Northern Star's bloodline, this foal could be worth millions. On the drive back to the stable, Lena's phone buzzed. She tapped the voicemail icon, and Sarah Miller's smug voice filled the car. "Hey, Lena, heard you're betting everything on Bella, again. Hope you've got a backup plan when this falls through, though we both know you can barely afford feed, let alone a second horse." Lena's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. She deleted the message, jaw clenched with determination. That evening, Lena gathered her small team in the stable's office. Rachel, her assistant trainer, and Tom, the stable hand, sat on worn leather chairs as she shared the news. "Bella's pregnant. The breeding took." Lena beamed, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. Rachel's smile faded quickly. "But the Wellington competition? It's only 2 weeks before her due date." "Lena, that's cutting it really close," Tom added, concern etched on his weathered face. "Bella's the strongest mare I've ever worked with," Lena said, waving away their worries. "She can handle it. We need this win." After the others left, Lena made her way to Bella's stall. The mare's dark eyes watched her approach, ears pricked forward in recognition. Lena ran her hand along Bella's neck, feeling the strong muscles beneath her palm. "We're going to prove them all wrong," she whispered, pressing her forehead against Bella's. "You and me, we're going to make history. Your baby will be worth everything we've worked for, and that competition win will set us up for life. I promise you, girl. This is our time to shine." Bella nickered softly in response, her breath warm against Lena's cheek. Lena's phone rang just as she was finishing her morning coffee. Dr. Rachel's name flashed on the screen, and she let out a small sigh before answering. "Good morning, Lena. I'd like to schedule Bella's first pregnancy checkup. I can be there around 10 if that works for you." Lena glanced at her watch. She'd planned a training session, but she knew the checkup was important. "Sure, that's fine." She tried to keep the reluctance out of her voice. Rachel was known for lectures about overworking horses, especially pregnant ones. "Perfect. I'll see you then," Rachel said, her tone warm but professional. At 10 sharp, Rachel's white truck pulled up to the stable. She stepped out carrying her medical bag, her red hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Bella whinnied softly as they approached her stall. "Hello, beautiful girl," Rachel cooed, running her hands gently along Bella's sides. The mare stood quietly as Rachel began her examination, checking vital signs and feeling for any abnormalities. "Her overall condition is excellent," Rachel said, making notes on her tablet. "But I'm concerned about your competition schedule." Lena crossed her arms. "What about it?" "The Wellington competition is extremely close to her due date. The stress of training and competing could put both Bella and the foal at risk." "We've got this handled," Lena said firmly. "Bella's used to high-intensity training." Rachel straightened up, meeting Lena's gaze. "This isn't just about training anymore. She's carrying a foal now. You need to scale back." "I can't just throw away months of preparation," Lena shot back. "Do you know how much money I've invested in this? Do you know how much you could lose if something goes wrong?" Rachel's voice was steady but stern. "Your mare's health has to come first." They stood in tense silence until Rachel packed up her equipment. "Think about what I said, Lena. Please." That evening, Lena led Bella into the arena. The mare's coat was already damp with sweat from their warm-up, but Lena pushed on with their routine. As they practiced a complex dressage sequence, Bella's movements seemed slightly off. "Come on, girl, focus," Lena urged, guiding Bella through another turn. The mare's ears flattened briefly, and she stumbled on a simple transition she usually handled perfectly. "It's just a minor misstep," Lena muttered to herself, patting Bella's neck. "We'll get it right next time." Later that night, Lena sat at her desk, surrounded by competition paperwork. Entry fees, travel arrangements, and training schedules spread out before her. She circled the competition date on her calendar, pushing Rachel's warnings to the back of her mind. They'd come too far to back down now. The morning sun had barely risen when Sarah's worried voice echoed through the stable. "Lena, come quick! Something's wrong with Bella!" Lena rushed to the mare's stall, where Bella's morning feed lay untouched in her bucket. The champion horse stood in the corner, head low and ears drooping. "She's never refused breakfast before," Sarah said, her brow furrowed with concern. Lena stepped into the stall, running her hand along Bella's neck. "She's probably just nervous about the sponsor event. You know how sensitive she can be." "Maybe we should call Doctor." "Rachel," Sarah suggested, reaching for her phone. "No," Lena said firmly. "We don't need Rachel questioning everything again. Bella will be fine once she gets moving." At the sponsor event that afternoon, the usually magnificent mare moved with none of her usual grace. Her hooves dragged slightly, and her head hung lower than normal during their demonstration. "Is that the same horse that won at Devon last year?" Lena overheard one sponsor whisper to another. "She looks tired. Maybe she's past her prime." Heat rushed to Lena's cheeks. "Come on, girl," she urged, tapping Bella's sides more firmly. "Show them what you can do." "Lena, please," Sarah called from the rail. "She's not herself today. We should stop." But Lena pressed on, guiding Bella through increasingly complex movements. The mare complied, but her usual spark was missing. A photographer circled them, his camera clicking rapidly, capturing images of Bella's labored performance. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She walked to the stable to check on Bella one last time. The sight that greeted her made her blood run cold. Bella lay on her side in the stall, her breathing heavy and irregular. Her eyes, usually bright and alert, were dull with exhaustion. Lena's hands shook as she finally reached for her phone. She found Rachel's number and pressed call, her throat tight with worry. "Rachel, I need you to come look at Bella," she said, her voice trembling. "First thing tomorrow morning, please." After hanging up, Lena grabbed a blanket from the tack room and settled onto a hay bale outside Bella's stall. She watched the mare's labored breathing, her mind racing between thoughts of upcoming competitions and the growing fear that she'd pushed her beloved horse too far. The night stretched endlessly as Lena paced the barn aisle, stopping every few minutes to check on Bella. Each time she looked at the mare's troubled form, the weight of her choices pressed harder on her conscience. The gravel crunched under Rachel's truck tires as she pulled up to the stable, just as dawn broke. Lena stood waiting, her face pale and drawn from a sleepless night. Without a word, Rachel grabbed her medical bag and followed Lena to Bella's stall. "How long has she been like this?" Rachel asked, her voice gentle but professional as she approached the mare. "She was down when I checked on her last night," Lena replied, wringing her hands. Under the harsh barn lights, Bella's coat had lost its usual shine, and her eyes looked dull and tired. Rachel worked methodically, checking Bella's vital signs and palpating her belly with practiced hands. The mare's discomfort was evident in the way she shifted her weight and pinned her ears back. "I need to do an ultrasound," Rachel said, reaching for her portable machine. As she moved the probe across Bella's abdomen, her expression grew serious. "Lena, come look at this." The fuzzy black and white image showed two distinct shapes. "Twins," Rachel said quietly, "and one is significantly smaller, positioned dangerously close to the cervix." "Twins?" Lena's voice cracked. "But that's twice as valuable." Rachel shook her head firmly. "This is serious, Lena. Twin pregnancies in horses are extremely dangerous. The smaller foal is already showing signs of distress, and its position puts both foals and Bella at risk." She took a deep breath. "We need to perform selective reduction. Terminate the smaller foal to give Bella and the other foal a chance to survive." "Absolutely not," Lena's voice echoed through the barn. "You're just being overcautious. Bella is strong. She can handle this." "This isn't about being cautious," Rachel shot back, her professional demeanor cracking. "This is about saving your horse's life. You're letting your ambition blind you to the reality of the situation." "You don't know Bella like I do," Lena spat. "She's special. She can do this." "Your stubbornness is going to get her killed." Rachel gathered her equipment, hands shaking with frustration. "Call me when you're ready to face reality." She stormed out of the barn, leaving behind the ultrasound printout on a nearby hay bale. Lena stood alone with Bella, her hand resting on the mare's neck. "Rachel doesn't understand," she whispered. "You're the strongest horse I've ever known. We can do this together." But as her eyes fell on the ultrasound image, the stark reality of the two foals, one healthy, one struggling, made her stomach twist. She picked up the picture, studying the smaller foal's precarious position. For the first time, doubt crept into her mind, challenging her certainty about the path ahead. The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Lena led Bella into the training arena. Her boots crunched on the frost-covered ground as she guided the mare to the center. Bella's usual eager stride was missing, replaced by slow, hesitant steps. "Come on, girl. Let's show everyone what you can do." Lena clicked her tongue, urging Bella into a trot. The mare responded sluggishly, her movements lacking their usual grace. Lena glanced at her phone, where sponsor messages waited for updates on Bella's progress. "Just a little more energy," Lena called out, tapping her riding crop against her boot. Bella tried to comply, picking up her pace, but her movements were mechanical and strained. Halfway through their routine, Bella's front leg buckled. The mare stumbled, barely catching herself before falling. Lena's heart jumped into her throat, but she quickly pushed down her fear. "Lena, stop this right now!" Sarah rushed into the arena, her face flushed with anger. "Can't you see she's suffering?" "She's fine," Lena snapped, though her voice wavered. "She just needs to work through it. Get her rhythm back. Sarah stepped directly in front of Lena, blocking her path. This isn't just about you anymore. Those twins are killing her, and you're making it worse. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. Either you call Dr. Rachel back, or I'm reporting this to animal welfare. Your choice. You wouldn't dare. Lena's voice cracked with disbelief. After everything I've done for you. Watch me. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she turned away. You have until tonight to make that call. She walked out of the arena, leaving Lena alone with Bella. Anger surged through Lena as she watched Sarah's retreating figure. She untacked Bella roughly and led her back to her stall, slamming the stable door behind her. Hours passed, and the sun began to set. Lena returned to check on Bella, her anger having faded into a hollow ache. The mare stood motionless in her stall, her untouched dinner growing cold in its bucket. The sight of the strong, proud horse reduced to this shell made Lena's chest tighten. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone and scrolled to Rachel's number. She stared at it for a long moment before finally pressing call. Rachel, it's Lena. I need you to come back. Please. The early morning light filtered through the stable windows as Rachel pulled up in her truck. Her face was set in a professional mask as she gathered her equipment, barely acknowledging Lena's presence with a curt nod. She's ready in the examination area, Lena said, trying to keep her voice steady. Rachel moved efficiently, setting up her portable ultrasound machine while Bella stood quietly. The mare's sides heaved with shallow breaths, her coat dull in the morning light. Hold her steady, Rachel instructed, applying gel to the ultrasound wand. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy images of the twins. Rachel's frown deepened as she moved the wand carefully across Bella's belly. Look here, Rachel pointed to the screen. The smaller foal is positioned dangerously close to the blood supply of the larger one. And here, she moved the wand slightly. Its position is putting excessive strain on Bella's injured hip. Lena's breath caught. How did you know about the hip injury? Rachel's voice turned sharp. I saw the surgical scar during my first exam, the one you conveniently forgot to mention. She turned to face Lena directly. That injury never fully healed, did it? You pushed her back into competition too soon. It wasn't like that, Lena protested. She recovered quickly. Did she? Or did you just convince yourself she did, because you needed her to compete? Rachel's words cut through the air like a knife. This isn't about medical opinions anymore, Lena. This is about you putting your ambitions ahead of an animal who trusts you. You have no right. Lena's voice rose. You're just a vet. You don't understand what we've built here, what we've sacrificed. What Bella has sacrificed, you mean, Rachel shot back. While you chase ribbons and sponsorships, she's the one paying the price. And now these foals. Get out! Lena's shout echoed through the stable. You're overstepping. I'll find another vet. Rachel packed her equipment with steady hands, her anger evident in every controlled movement. At the stable door, she turned back one last time. If you wait too long, you won't just lose the foals, you'll lose Bella too. The door closed behind her with a final thud, leaving Lena alone in the stable. She sank onto a hay bale, watching Bella's labored breathing as Rachel's words echoed in her mind. Lena's hands trembled as she opened the plain white envelope that had arrived with the morning mail. Inside, she found several glossy photographs from the recent sponsor event. Her stomach turned as she examined each one. Bella's head hanging low, her eyes dull, her movements clearly strained. A typed note accompanied the photos. How can you call yourself a trainer when you're destroying your own horse? Everyone can see what you're doing to her. For what? A few ribbons and sponsorship dollars. The words stung like a physical blow. Lena crumpled the note in her fist and tossed it into the trash, trying to ignore the knot forming in her chest. "Just someone trying to get under my skin," she muttered, heading to her office to check her emails. But her inbox told a similar story. Anonymous messages flooded her screen. Saw Bella at the event. Disgraceful. Everyone's talking about how you're running that poor mare into the ground. What happened to you, Lena? You used to care about the horses? Her phone buzzed with a text from another trainer. Heard about Bella's condition. Word spreads fast in this community. Lena's hand shook as she set down her phone. The walls of her small office seemed to close in around her. She could hear whispers from the stable hands outside, their voices carrying through the thin walls. The sound of boots on concrete made her look up. Sarah stood in the doorway, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder. "What are you doing?" Lena asked, though she already knew the answer. "I can't do this anymore," Sarah said quietly. "I've watched you push Bella too hard for months now. I've tried to speak up, tried to make you see reason, but you won't listen." She adjusted the strap on her shoulder. "I won't be part of this, Lena. I won't stand by and watch while you destroy that mare." "Sarah, please." Lena started to rise from her desk. "No." Sarah's voice was firm. "You're digging yourself into a hole you won't be able to climb out of. When this all comes crashing down, and it will, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing through the barn. Lena sat alone in her office, the anonymous letters and emails swimming before her eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to really look at the photos spread across her desk, to see what everyone else saw when they looked at Bella. The sound of thrashing jolted Lena awake just after midnight. She rushed from her small room above the stable, her heart pounding as she descended the stairs. The emergency lights cast an eerie glow across the barn aisle as she ran to Bella's stall. Inside, the mare lay on her side, her legs kicking weakly against the straw bedding. Bella's sides heaved with each labored breath, and sweat darkened her coat despite the cool night air. Her eyes, usually so gentle and bright, were wild with fear and pain. "No, no, no," Lena whispered, dropping to her knees beside the horse. Her trembling hands reached for her phone, and she dialed Rachel's number without hesitation. Each ring felt like an eternity. "Rachel, please," Lena's voice cracked. "It's Bella. She's down, and I don't know what to do. I know we fought, but please, I need your help." Rachel's voice came through clear and professional. "I'm on my way. Keep her as calm as possible. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes stretched like hours as Lena sat with Bella, stroking her neck and murmuring softly. The mare's trembling hadn't stopped, and her breathing grew more labored with each passing minute. When Rachel burst through the barn doors with her medical kit, Lena had never been so relieved to see anyone in her life. Rachel worked quickly, checking Bella's vital signs and setting up an IV line for fluids. "The medication should help stabilize her," Rachel said as she administered several injections. "But Lena, we've reached a critical point." She met Lena's eyes with unwavering intensity. "Without immediate intervention, we're going to lose all three of them, Bella and both foals." Lena's throat tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to make a decision right now. We can perform the selective termination of the compromised foal, which will give Bella and the other foal a fighting chance. Or we wait and risk losing everything." Rachel's voice softened. "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but there's no more time for denial." Lena sat back against the stall wall, her mind racing. All her dreams of twin foals with championship bloodlines, all her plans for redemption in the equestrian world, they seemed hollow now as she watched Bella struggle for breath. Tears began streaming down her face as she stroked Bella's sweaty neck. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the mare. "I'm so sorry I pushed you this far. I was so focused on what I wanted that I forgot about what you needed." Bella's dark eye rolled toward her, filled with trust despite everything. Lena's heart broke at the sight. All these years, Bella had given her everything: her strength, her grace, her unwavering loyalty. And how had Lena repaid that trust? She wiped her eyes and looked up at Rachel. Do whatever it takes to save her. The first rays of sunlight crept through the stable windows, casting long shadows across the barn floor. Rachel methodically arranged her medical equipment on a sterile cloth while her assistant prepped the area around Bella. The mare stood quietly in her stall, sedated but still conscious, her sides rising and falling with each careful breath. Lena hugged herself in the corner, watching as Rachel laid out syringes, ultrasound equipment, and other tools she couldn't name. Each metallic click of instruments being arranged made her flinch. "Are you sure there's no other way?" Lena's voice was barely a whisper. Rachel paused, her expression gentle but firm. "This is our best chance to save Bella and the stronger foal." The procedure began with Rachel carefully positioning the ultrasound wand. The screen showed two distinct shapes, one clearly larger than the other. Bella shifted uncomfortably, and Lena's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Steady now," Rachel murmured to her assistant. "We need to be precise." She explained each step in hushed tones as she worked, her movements deliberate and focused. A soft groan escaped Bella's throat, making Lena's heart jump. The mare's legs trembled slightly, and sweat began to darken her coat. Lena pressed her hands against her mouth, fighting back tears as she watched her beloved horse endure the consequences of her ambition. Suddenly, Bella flinched. Rachel froze, her hands steady but her face tense. "Easy, girl," she whispered, waiting for the mare to settle before continuing. The seconds ticked by like hours until Bella stilled again. When Rachel finally stepped back, pulling off her gloves, the morning sun had filled the stable. "It's done," she said softly. "The procedure was successful. We lost the smaller foal, but the stronger one is stable." Bella stood in her stall, alive but exhausted. Her breathing was shallow, her head hanging low. Rachel checked her vital signs one last time before gathering her equipment. "She'll need complete rest and careful monitoring," Rachel explained, "but she should recover fully." Lena sank down onto a hay bale beside Bella's stall. She reached through the bars to stroke the mare's nose, her throat tight with conflicting emotions: grief for the lost foal, relief for Bella's survival, and the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Lena woke with a start, her neck stiff from sleeping against the stall door. Bella stood in the same spot she'd been all night, her coat dull in the morning light. The mare's eyes were clearer, though, and she'd managed to drink some water overnight. Rachel arrived promptly at 7, her medical bag in hand. "How was she through the night?" she asked, pulling out her stethoscope. "Quiet. She drank a little," Lena said, moving aside to let Rachel examine Bella. Rachel listened to Bella's heart and checked her temperature. "Her vital signs are improving, but she's still very weak." She ran her hands along Bella's sides, checking for any signs of distress. "She'll need at least 6 weeks of complete rest. No training, no stress, just recovery." By mid-morning, Lena's phone started buzzing with notifications. More anonymous messages flooded her inbox, each one harder to read than the last. "How could you let this happen?" one read. "You don't deserve to work with horses," said another. Her hand shook as she opened an email from her primary sponsor. The message was brief but clear. They were pulling their support. 2 more similar emails followed within the hour. Feeling desperate and alone, Lena scrolled through her contacts and stopped at Sarah's name. She pressed dial before she could change her mind. "Hello? Sarah's voice was cold. "Sarah, I—" Lena's voice cracked. "I need help with Bella." "You should have thought about that before pushing her so hard." Sarah's words cut deep. "Your choices hurt everyone around you, Lena, especially Bella. I can't come back and watch you destroy her." The line went dead before Lena could respond. Later that afternoon, Lena sat at her desk, surrounded by withdrawal notices from sponsors and angry messages, her eyes fixed on the ultrasound image Rachel had left behind. The surviving foal was clearly visible, tiny but alive, its heart beating strongly despite everything. Lena traced the outline of the foal with her finger, her vision blurring with tears. All her dreams of glory, all her ambitious plans, they seemed hollow now. She'd nearly lost everything, including Bella chasing after them. The image of Bella struggling through training sessions, the mare's quiet signs of distress she'd ignored, the warnings she'd dismissed, they all came rushing back. Her chest tightened as she realized just how much her drive for success had cost her. Her reputation, her sponsors, her team's trust, and nearly Bella's life. She set the ultrasound image down gently. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain: Bella's recovery and the health of her surviving foal had to come first. Everything else could wait. The stable door creaked open, and Lena's heart sank as she recognized the clicking of designer boots on concrete. Diane Morris strode in, her perfectly pressed riding jacket and immaculate appearance a stark contrast to Lena's disheveled state. "Well, well, how the mighty have fallen," Diane said, her red lips curving into a cold smile. She pulled out her phone, showing Lena photos from the sponsor event. "These are quite telling, aren't they?" Pushing a pregnant mare to exhaustion, that's not going to look good in the press. Lena's hands clenched into fists. "What do you want, Diane?" "Want? I want everyone to see who you really are." Diane's voice dripped with contempt. A desperate trainer who'd risk her horse's life for a shot at glory. "You don't know anything about me or Bella," Lena snapped, but her voice wavered. "I know enough." Diane waved her phone. "These photos will make sure you never work with horses again." After Diane left, Lena spent hours on the phone, her voice growing hoarse as she tried to salvage relationships with her remaining sponsors. But the responses were all similar. They needed to reassess their partnerships, or were taking a different direction. "We've seen the photos, Lena," one sponsor said gently. "And with Diane Morris speaking out against you, well, we have to protect our brand." By evening, Lena felt hollow. She walked to Bella's stall and found Rachel there, checking the mare's vital signs. "Her temperature's normal," Rachel said, looking up. She must have noticed Lena's red eyes because her professional demeanor softened. "What's wrong?" Lena's composure crumbled. "Diane Morris came by today. She has photos from the sponsor event threatening to destroy what's left of my reputation." Her voice broke. "I'm losing everything, Rachel. My sponsors, my credibility, everything I worked for is falling apart." Rachel set down her medical bag. "You made the right choice for Bella. That's what matters most right now. But my career can be rebuilt," Rachel interrupted firmly. "On better foundations this time. Stop focusing on what you're losing and start thinking about what you can build from here." Tears rolled down Lena's cheeks as she watched Bella nuzzle her feed bucket. "I don't know how to start over." "You already have," Rachel said softly. "The moment you chose Bella's well-being over your ambition, that was your first step." Rachel moved the ultrasound wand carefully across Bella's side, her eyes fixed on the screen. A smile spread across her face as the image became clear. "Look at this, Lena. The foal is developing beautifully." Lena leaned in closer, her breath catching as she saw the strong heartbeat flickering on the screen. The foal's shape was more defined now, its tiny legs moving in fluid motions. "Bella's recovery has been remarkable," Rachel said, patting the mare's neck. "And this little one seems to have inherited her fighting spirit. See how active it is." Lena felt tears welling up as she watched the foal shift position. "It's amazing." "The position is perfect now," Rachel continued, pointing to different areas on the screen. "No complications. This is exactly what we want to see." After Rachel packed up her equipment, Lena stayed with Bella, stroking her soft muzzle. The mare's eyes were bright and alert, so different from the exhausted gaze that had haunted Lena's nightmares. "Hope," Lena whispered suddenly, the word feeling right on her tongue. "That's what I'm going to call your baby, Bella, because that's what you both gave me. Hope for a better way forward." She spent the afternoon in the stable, taking her time with simple tasks she'd rushed through before. As she groomed Bella's coat, she noticed things she'd missed in her previous drive for perfection. The way Bella leaned into the brushstrokes, how she nickered softly when Lena hit just the right spot. "I forgot what this felt like," Lena murmured, pressing her forehead against Bella's neck. "Just being here with you, not pushing for the next achievement." That evening, Lena sat at her computer, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. After several deep breaths, she began to type. "To the equestrian community, I owe you all an apology. In my pursuit of success, I lost sight of what matters most, the well-being of the incredible animals in my care. I pushed my mare Bella too hard during her pregnancy, ignoring the warnings of those who knew better. My actions nearly cost both Bella and her unborn foals their lives. Thanks to Dr. Rachel Carter's intervention, Bella survived and is carrying a healthy foal. I've named the foal Hope because that's what this experience has given me. Hope that I can learn from my mistakes and become a better trainer, one who puts horses first. I understand if you can't forgive my past choices, but I promise to do better. From now on, Bella and Hope's well-being comes before any ribbon or trophy. Sincerely, Lena Brown." Her hand shook as she clicked post. In Bella's stall later that night, Lena watched the mare dozing peacefully. She could see the gentle swell of hope growing within, and for the first time in weeks, she felt truly at peace. Lena's phone buzzed incessantly as she woke the next morning. Her social media post had exploded overnight. Scrolling through the notifications, her stomach churned at the mix of responses. While many animal welfare advocates praised her honesty, the competitive equestrian circle was far less forgiving. "Finally admitting what we all knew," read one comment. "Too little, too late," said another. Her hands trembled when she saw Diane Morris's response. "Some people will say anything to save face. Real trainers don't make these amateur mistakes in the first place. PR stunt." The morning dragged on as Lena made difficult calls to her remaining sponsors and clients. She sat at her desk, clutching her coffee mug like a lifeline. "I understand your concerns," she said to her longest-standing client, "but I promise you, this change in direction will make me a better trainer." The line went dead before she finished speaking. By afternoon, Diane had launched another attack. A video appeared online showing clips from the sponsor event. Bella stumbling, sweating heavily, her eyes dull with exhaustion. The footage had been edited to emphasize every misstep, every sign of strain. The caption read, "The truth about Lena Brown's training methods." The comments section filled quickly with outrage. Former clients began posting their own stories, some true, others exaggerated. Lena's phone continued to buzz with cancellations. As evening approached, Lena escaped to the stable. The familiar scent of hay and horses wrapped around her like a comfort blanket. Inside Bella's stall, Hope pranced around her mother's legs, full of energy and life. The foal's playful movements brought a genuine smile to Lena's face for the first time that day. Rachel arrived for her evening checkup, medical bag in hand. She watched Hope's antics with approval. "Look at that spirit," she said, noting Bella's improved condition. "You know, Lena, what you did today, posting that letter, it took real courage." "Doesn't feel like courage," Lena replied, watching Hope nuzzle against Bella. "Feels like career suicide." "Sometimes doing the right thing costs us," Rachel said, packing up her equipment. "But you're building something better, something honest." She squeezed Lena's shoulder before heading out. Alone in the stable, Lena pulled out her notebook and began jotting down ideas. Perhaps she could transform her facility into something different, a place focused on rehabilitation and proper training techniques. Her pen moved faster as the ideas flowed, and for the first time that day, she felt a spark of excitement about the future. Lena sat across from Mark, her accountant, watching as he spread spreadsheets across her office desk. The morning sun cast harsh shadows over the numbers that told a grim story. Two other staff members, both looking worried, crowded around the desk. "Bottom line," Mark said, adjusting his glasses, "without new income in the next 3 months, we'll have to close down." He pointed to a column of red figures. The loss of sponsors hit harder than expected, and the existing client withdrawals. He shook his head. Lena's throat tightened as she studied the papers. Years of work, all her dreams of competitive glory. They were slipping away like sand through her fingers. "What about the competition circuit?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "The entry fees alone would sink us," Mark replied gently. "Not to mention the travel costs, boarding." One of her remaining staff members, Tom, cleared his throat. "Maybe it's time to think about something different." The words hung heavy in the air as Lena nodded slowly. The path she'd been following had led to a dead end. Later that afternoon, Lena found herself sharing her troubles with Rachel during Bella's checkup. They stood watching Hope playfully kick up hay, while Rachel described her latest case, a retired show jumper with severe anxiety. "The owner couldn't afford specialized care," Rachel explained, her eyes lighting up as she continued. "But with the right approach, we got him calm enough to enjoy retirement. These horses just need someone who understands them." Lena watched Rachel's passionate gestures as she spoke about rehabilitation techniques. Something clicked in her mind. "How many horses like that are out there?" she asked. "Ones that need specialized care." "Too many," Rachel replied. "Most facilities focus on competition training. There's a real need for rehabilitation centers, especially for retired show horses." Lena felt her pulse quicken. "What if—" she began, ideas suddenly flowing. "What if we turned this place into something like that? A rehabilitation center?" Rachel's face broke into a warm smile. "You know, I might be able to help with that. I have connections with local sponsors who support animal welfare projects, and the community would likely get behind it too." They spent the next hour brainstorming possibilities. Rachel offered to help draft a proposal, explaining what potential backers would want to see. That night, Lena sat at her desk, surrounded by notes and research materials. Her laptop glowed with multiple tabs open, articles about equine rehabilitation, business plan templates, grant applications. The stable was quiet, except for the occasional soft nicker from the horses. She typed furiously, outlining services they could offer: rehabilitation programs for injured horses, retirement care for aging champions, training workshops on proper horse care. Her expertise could be redirected to helping horses heal rather than pushing them to perform. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, Lena felt truly excited. This wasn't just a way to save her business. It was a chance to make a real difference. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she worked on the business plan, the hours slipping by unnoticed. The morning sun had barely crested the horizon when Diane's sleek black Mercedes pulled into the stable's gravel driveway. Lena watched from her office window, her jaw tightening at the sight of her longtime rival stepping out in perfectly pressed riding clothes. "Tell her I'm busy," Lena instructed Tom, who stood uncertainly by the door. "She says it's important," Tom replied. "Says she won't leave until you talk to her." Lena sighed, rubbing her temples. "Fine. Send her in." Diane entered the office with her usual confidence, but something seemed different. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, her usual smirk replaced by an expression Lena couldn't quite read. "What do you want?" Lena asked flatly. Diane sat down uninvited, smoothing her riding pants. "I've been doing some thinking," she began, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge, "about everything that's happened." "You mean about how you tried to destroy my reputation?" "Yes, that." Diane looked down at her hands. "I was jealous. You were always the golden girl, everyone's favorite. Even when you made mistakes, people rooted for you. I never had that." Lena blinked, caught off guard by this unexpected vulnerability. "I heard about your plans for the rehabilitation center," Diane continued. "Oh, and I have a proposition. What if we work together?" "Together?" Lena almost laughed. "After everything you've done?" "Think about it practically," Diane leaned forward. "I have connections, resources. You have the expertise and the facility. Together, we could make this work." Lena studied her rival's face, searching for signs of deception. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I understand what it's like to lose everything for ambition," Diane replied softly. "I had a horse once. I pushed her too hard. Sound familiar?" The revelation hung heavy in the air between them. Later that afternoon, Lena found Rachel checking on Bella and shared Diane's unexpected visit and proposal. "Be careful," Rachel warned, running her hand along Bella's flank. "Diane's reputation for manipulation isn't unfounded." "I know," Lena nodded. "But she has a point about the resources. This center needs more than just good intentions to succeed." Rachel considered this. Her connections could fast-track everything we've been planning. Just don't rush into anything. "I told her I'd think about it," Lena said, watching Hope nuzzle against her mother. "I'll sleep on it before making any decisions." Rachel nodded approvingly. Sometimes the hardest choices are between what's safe and what's necessary. The morning dew still clung to the grass as Lena and Rachel walked the perimeter of an old training facility just outside of town. The faded red barn needed a fresh coat of paint, and the paddock fences were weathered, but Lena could see the potential beneath the wear and tear. "Look at all this space," Lena said, gesturing to the sprawling pastures. "We could build specialized recovery areas here, and that barn could house at least 20 horses." Rachel nodded, taking notes on her clipboard. "The indoor arena would be perfect for controlled exercise programs. And there's enough land to create separate turnout areas for horses at different stages of recovery." Lena stopped at a broken fence post, running her hand along the splintered wood. "It needs work, but I can see it, Rachel. I can see horses healing here." "Like Bella did," Rachel added softly. "Exactly like Bella." After touring the property, Lena made her decision. She called Diane and arranged to meet at a local cafe. The two women sat across from each other, both slightly tense but determined to move forward. "I'll accept your partnership," Lena said firmly, "but I have conditions. The horses come first, always. No cutting corners on care, no rushing recoveries for profit." Diane nodded, stirring her coffee. "I agree. I've learned my lesson about pushing too hard. I can handle the business side, permits, funding, marketing, while you focus on the rehabilitation programs." "And Rachel stays on as our head veterinarian," Lena added. "She's earned that trust." "Of course." Diane pulled out her tablet, showing Lena a spreadsheet. "I've already reached out to some potential investors. They're interested in supporting an ethical rehabilitation center." As they worked through the details, Lena noticed a change in Diane's demeanor. The sharp edges had softened, replaced by genuine enthusiasm as they discussed their plans for the facility. That evening, Lena returned to the stable, her mind still buzzing with possibilities. She found Bella and Hope in the small training arena, where Hope was investigating a low pole on the ground, her first introduction to jumping obstacles. Lena leaned against the fence, watching as Hope approached the pole cautiously. The foal backed away twice before gathering her courage. With a little hop, she cleared the pole, landing awkwardly but proudly on the other side. "Did you see that, Bella?" Lena whispered, her heart swelling as Hope pranced around her mother. "Your little girl is already so brave." Bella nickered softly, touching her nose to Hope's flank. Lena walked over and stroked Bella's neck, feeling the strong muscles beneath her hand. "Everything we went through," she murmured to the mare, "all the hard times, they're going to mean something. We're going to help other horses find their way back, just like you did." The community center buzzed with anticipation as local business owners, equestrian enthusiasts, and potential investors filed into their seats. Lena's hands trembled slightly as she arranged her presentation materials at the podium, while Diane worked the room with practiced ease. "You've got this," Rachel whispered, giving Lena's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before taking her seat in the front row. Lena took a deep breath and began her speech. "6 months ago, I stood in a stable, watching my champion mare struggle for her life, knowing it was my own ambition that put her there." Her voice grew stronger as she continued, sharing Bella's story of recovery and her vision for the rehabilitation center. As she spoke, Lena noticed some faces softening while others remained skeptical. She pulled up a photo of Hope playing in the paddock with Bella. "This is what second chances look like," she said. "Every horse deserves the opportunity to heal, to recover, to find joy again." During the question and answer session, the room divided. Several local business owners pledged support immediately, moved by Lena's transformation. Others raised concerns about her past decisions and Diane's reputation for aggressive business practices. Rachel stood up, her presence commanding attention. "As someone who's worked with both Lena and Diane, I can vouch for their commitment to this project. I've seen firsthand how they've changed their approach to horse care." Her endorsement carried weight, particularly with several influential veterinary suppliers who had been on the fence. They approached Lena afterward, expressing interest in providing equipment for the center. As the crowd thinned, Lena and Diane found themselves alone at a corner table, both exhausted from the presentations. "You know," Diane said quietly, staring into her coffee cup, "I had a horse like Bella once. His name was Thunder." She paused, her usual confidence falling away. "I pushed him too hard, ignored the warning signs. He collapsed during a championship round." Lena watched Diane's hands tighten around her cup. "What happened to him?" "We couldn't save him." Diane's voice cracked slightly. "That's why I became so cutthroat afterward. I thought if I focused only on business, it wouldn't hurt so much." Before Lena could respond, her phone rang. She answered, listening intently as her real estate agent delivered the news. When she hung up, she turned to Diane with wide eyes. "The property. They accepted our offer." The morning sun cast long shadows across the overgrown property as Lena, Diane, and Rachel walked through their newly acquired rehabilitation center. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete, and paint peeled from the weathered barn walls. But Lena couldn't stop smiling. "The roof needs work," Diane noted, making notes on her tablet. "I'll start reaching out to our pledged donors today." Rachel walked the perimeter of the main stable, her experienced eye assessing the structure. "The bones are good. We'll need to modernize the ventilation system, but it's spacious enough for our initial plans." "I can see it already," Lena said, pushing open a creaky door. "This could be our medical bay, and that corner would be perfect for recovery stalls." They spent the morning dividing responsibilities. Diane took charge of fundraising and community outreach, while Rachel developed protocols for animal care and rehabilitation programs. Lena would oversee the daily operations and renovation work. As weeks passed, challenges mounted. Contractors discovered structural issues that doubled their budget estimates. Permits took longer than expected, and local competitors spread rumors about the center's viability. One afternoon, Lena rushed between meetings with builders and caring for Bella and Hope. She found herself stretched thin, missing Hope's afternoon feeding and arriving late to a crucial meeting with suppliers. "You're trying to do too much," Rachel said, finding Lena slumped over blueprints in the temporary office they'd set up. "Let me handle Bella and Hope's care schedule. You focus on getting this place ready." "But they need me," Lena protested weakly. "They need you healthy and focused," Rachel countered, taking the plans from Lena's hands. "You're not alone in this anymore." That evening, Lena took a quiet walk around the property, needing space to clear her head. Behind the main barn, hidden by years of neglect, she discovered an old training arena. The fencing was broken, and weeds grew through the dirt floor, but something about the space called to her. Lena stepped into the center of the arena, memories flooding back of watching children interact with horses at her old stable. She pulled out her notebook and began sketching, imagining the space transformed into a therapy area where injured horses could help heal troubled children. The soft sound of Hope nickering in the distance brought a smile to her face as she continued drawing her plans for the future. The early morning light painted golden streaks across the paddock as Lena stood by the fence, her heart racing with anticipation. Hope, now strong enough for her first real training session, pranced nervously beside Bella. The young foal's coat gleamed with health, a testament to her recovery. "Easy there, sweetheart," Lena called softly as Hope skittered sideways. Bella nudged her daughter gently, showing remarkable patience. Despite her own ongoing recovery, the mare maintained a quiet dignity that brought tears to Lena's eyes. Hope circled the paddock, matching her stride to her mother's measured pace. When she stumbled slightly, Bella slowed, waiting for her foal to regain confidence. Lena watched in amazement as the two horses communicated silently, years of competitive training falling away as she witnessed something far more valuable. "This isn't about perfection anymore," Lena whispered to herself, letting go of old habits that urged her to correct Hope's form. Instead, she focused on encouraging the foal's natural curiosity and building trust. Lena entered the paddock slowly, careful not to startle Hope. She carried a few small poles for groundwork training. Rather than setting up rigid exercises, she scattered them casually, creating an inviting playground. Hope approached the poles cautiously, sniffing them while Bella watched nearby. "That's it," Lena encouraged, stepping back to give Hope space. The foal tested the poles with her hoof, then looked to her mother. Bella demonstrated by stepping carefully over one, and Hope followed, her movements becoming more confident with each attempt. As the session progressed, Lena noticed something remarkable. Hope wasn't just mimicking Bella's actions. She was developing her own gentle personality. When Lena raised one of the poles slightly off the ground, creating a small jump, Hope paused. Bella nickered softly, and the foal gathered her courage. With a graceful movement that brought fresh tears to Lena's eyes, Hope cleared the tiny jump. Her landing wasn't perfect, but her achievement shone in her proud stance and perked ears. Bella touched her nose to Hope's neck in a gesture of maternal pride. That evening, Lena sat in the stable office, her journal open before her. She wrote about Hope's milestone, describing not just the physical achievement, but the beautiful interaction between mother and foal. As her pen moved across the paper, Lena realized she'd witnessed something far more valuable than any competition victory: the pure joy of a horse learning to trust itself. The morning sun cast long shadows across the newly painted fences of the rehabilitation center. Lena adjusted a welcome banner while Diane directed the catering staff and Rachel organized informational displays about equine therapy. The once dilapidated property had transformed into a peaceful sanctuary, complete with freshly painted barns, manicured pastures, and a beautifully restored training arena. "I can hardly believe this is the same place," Diane said, pausing to admire their work. The main barn gleamed with fresh paint, its wide doors thrown open to welcome visitors. Cars began pulling into the gravel parking area as guests arrived for the grand opening. Families with children, local business owners, and familiar faces from the equestrian community filed in, their excited chatter filling the air. Rachel greeted a group of physical therapists who had partnered with the center, while Lena welcomed former clients who had supported her through the transition. During the formal program, Rachel led a demonstration with one of their first rehabilitation cases, a retired show jumper with a leg injury. She explained each therapeutic technique clearly, showing how the gentle exercises helped rebuild strength and confidence. The audience watched, captivated, as the horse responded positively to her methods. When it was Lena's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and faced the crowd. "A year ago, I lost my way," she began, her voice steady. "I forgot that success isn't measured by ribbons or trophies, but by the trust and well-being of the animals in our care." She shared Bella's story, watching heads nod in understanding as she described her journey from ambition to compassion. Diane stepped forward next, surprising everyone with her announcement. "To ensure this center serves everyone who needs it," she declared, "I'm establishing a scholarship fund with 20% of my competition earnings." The crowd burst into applause, and Lena caught Rachel wiping away a tear. As the afternoon wound down and guests began to leave, Lena slipped away to the stable. The familiar scent of hay and horses welcomed her as she walked to Bella's stall. Hope pranced inside, full of youthful energy, while Bella stood watching her daughter with maternal pride. Lena leaned against the stall door and Bella approached, pressing her soft muzzle against Lena's hand. The gesture held years of shared experiences, the triumphs, the struggles, and finally, redemption. Hope bounced over to join them, her eyes bright with curiosity and trust. Standing there with both horses, Lena felt a deep sense of contentment wash over her. She smiled, knowing that this was exactly where she was meant to be. The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Lena sat at her desk, staring at the center's financial reports. The numbers weren't adding up the way she'd hoped. Despite the successful grand opening and positive press, securing steady funding proved more challenging than expected. "We need to think bigger," Diane insisted during their weekly meeting. She spread glossy photos across Lena's desk showing elaborate charity galas at other equestrian facilities. "Look at these events. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, celebrity appearances. That's what attracts the big donors." Lena frowned, pushing the photos away. "This isn't what we built this place for. We're supposed to be helping horses heal, not hosting parties." "We can't help anyone if we can't keep the lights on," Diane countered, her voice sharp. "Your idealism is admirable, but it won't pay the bills." The tension between them grew as they argued. Diane wanted to transform the training arena into an event space on weekends. She suggested charging premium rates for photo shoots and corporate team-building exercises. Each proposal made Lena's stomach turn. "These horses aren't props," Lena said firmly. "They're here to recover, not entertain." "Then maybe you should have stayed in competition," Diane snapped, gathering her things. At least there, your stubbornness earned prize money." She stormed out, leaving Lena alone with her doubts. That evening, Lena sat in the empty training arena, watching shadows lengthen across the sand. The quiet space that usually brought her peace now felt heavy with uncertainty. She'd risked everything to build this dream. Her reputation, her savings, her entire career. What if it wasn't enough? The soft crunch of footsteps in sand announced Rachel's arrival. The veterinarian settled beside Lena on the wooden bench, not speaking at first. "I heard about the argument with Diane," Rachel said finally. "She thinks I'm being naive," Lena replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Maybe she's right. Maybe this whole idea was just wishful thinking." Rachel shook her head. "Look over there." She pointed to where Bella and Hope grazed peacefully in their paddock. "That mare was on the brink of collapse a few months ago. Now she's healthy, happy, and raising a strong foal. That's not wishful thinking. That's real change." "But one success story won't keep the center running," Lena sighed. "No," Rachel agreed, "but it proves what's possible when we put the horses first. The 3 new rehabilitation cases we took in last week, they're already showing improvement. The therapy sessions with local children are making a difference. That's your vision coming to life, Lena. Don't compromise it for quick money." Lena felt something settle in her chest, a quiet certainty that had been missing lately. Rachel was right. She hadn't built this place to make it rich. She'd built it to make it matter. The early morning quiet at the rehabilitation center was shattered by urgent calls from the stable hand. Rusty, a recently rescued gelding with a history of abuse, lay trembling in his stall, his breathing labored and his eyes glazed with pain. Rachel arrived within minutes, her medical bag in hand. After a thorough examination, she pulled Lena aside, her expression grave. "He needs intensive treatment, medications, specialized care, maybe even surgery. The costs?" She handed Lena a preliminary estimate that made her heart sink. "That's almost all we have left in our emergency fund," Lena whispered, her hand shaking as she held the paper. Diane arrived shortly after, having heard the news. Her practical nature emerged immediately. "Lena, we have to think about the bigger picture. That money is keeping this place running. We have other horses to consider, staff to pay." Rachel crossed her arms. "Without treatment, Rusty won't make it through the week. Is that what this center stands for?" The weight of the decision pressed down on Lena's shoulders as she walked to Rusty's stall. The gelding's dark eyes met hers, filled with a pain that went beyond physical suffering. His scarred flanks trembled with each labored breath. Lena remembered finding him 3 weeks ago, terrified of human touch, bearing the marks of years of neglect. Standing there, Lena's mind went to Bella, to those desperate nights when she'd nearly lost everything because she'd put success before her horse's welfare. She thought of the promises she'd made, to herself, to Bella, to every animal that would come through these doors. "Start the treatment," Lena told Rachel, her voice firm despite her racing heart. "Whatever he needs." Diane shook her head. "This could bankrupt us." "If we turn our backs on him, we might as well close now," Lena replied, "because we'd be no better than those who hurt him in the first place." Over the next few days, Rachel worked tirelessly to save Rusty. Lena spent hours by his stall, watching his slow but steady improvement. On the 4th day, Diane visited again, watching as Rusty lifted his head to nuzzle Lena's hand, the first time he'd willingly sought human contact. "I was wrong," Diane admitted quietly. "Seeing him now, this is exactly what this place should be about." She paused, then added, "Forget what I said about the galas and photo shoots. Let's tell stories like Rusty's instead. Real stories about second chances and healing. That's what will touch people's hearts and their wallets." Lena felt tears prick her eyes as Rusty gently nibbled at her fingers. His trust a precious gift she'd almost been too afraid to fight for. Looking at Diane's softened expression, she realized that sometimes the riskiest choices led to the most important victories. Lena stood at the edge of the therapy arena, her heart racing as she watched Hope take tentative steps toward the small group of children. The young foal's coat gleamed in the morning sun, her movements careful and deliberate. Among the children, a thin boy with tousled brown hair hung back from the others, his shoulders hunched and eyes fixed on the ground. "This is Ethan," the therapist whispered to Lena. "He hasn't spoken much since his parents' divorce." Hope seemed drawn to the quiet child. She approached him slowly, her ears perked forward with curiosity. Ethan glanced up briefly before looking away, his hands twisting the hem of his shirt. "It's okay," Lena said softly. "Hope's just saying hello." The other children gathered around Hope, giggling as she nuzzled their hands for treats. But Hope kept returning to Ethan, standing patiently nearby as if sensing his unease. After several minutes, Ethan's hand reached out slightly, then quickly withdrew. Hope lowered her head to his level and nickered softly. A tiny smile flickered across Ethan's face. "Would you like to brush her?" the therapist asked, holding out a soft brush. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. His first strokes were barely touching Hope's coat, but the foal stood perfectly still, occasionally turning to look at him with her gentle brown eyes. Gradually, his movements became more confident. "She likes you," Lena observed, watching as Hope leaned slightly into Ethan's brushing. A quiet laugh escaped Ethan's lips as Hope playfully nudged his pocket, searching for treats. The sound seemed to surprise even him. By the end of the session, Ethan was speaking in soft whispers to Hope, telling her secrets that made him smile. Later that evening, Lena sat at her computer, emotions still raw from watching the day's transformations. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, sharing the story of Hope's journey from a struggling twin to a beacon of healing for others. She wrote about Ethan's breakthrough, about the power of unconditional love, and about second chances. As she wrote, more parents began sharing their own stories in the comments. Messages of support and donation notifications pinged on her screen. Bella's soft nickering from the nearby stall reminded her of where this journey had begun. Looking at the growing response to her post, Lena felt tears well up in her eyes. The center's future, which had seemed so uncertain just days ago, was beginning to brighten. Hope had lived up to her name in more ways than one. The rehabilitation center buzzed with quiet excitement as guests mingled in the newly renovated courtyard. Strings of soft lights twinkled overhead, casting a warm glow on the gathering. 6 months of hard work had transformed the once run-down property into a sanctuary of hope and healing. Lena watched as Rusty's new family shared stories about his progress. The once fearful gelding now carried their daughter on gentle trail rides, his eyes bright with trust and contentment. Nearby, several children who'd participated in therapy sessions pointed excitedly toward the paddock where Hope grazed alongside her mother. "I can hardly believe how far we've come," Rachel said, joining Lena by the refreshment table. "Remember when you thought this was all going to fall apart?" Lena smiled, remembering those difficult early days. We wouldn't be here without everyone's support. As the sun began to set, Lena stepped onto the small platform they'd set up near the main barn. The crowd quieted, turning their attention to her. 6 months ago, she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness, I stood here and made a promise to put the well-being of our horses first. That promise came after I nearly lost everything by putting my ambitions ahead of what truly mattered. She paused, glancing at Bella grazing peacefully in the distance. The journey hasn't been easy, but it's taught me more about love, healing, and second chances than I ever imagined possible. Diane stepped forward then, holding an envelope. "Speaking of second chances," she said, "I have something to share." She handed the envelope to Lena. "Remember Maxwell Industries? They've been watching our progress. They want to become our primary sponsor." Lena's hands trembled as she opened the envelope, her eyes widening at the figure on the check inside. This would secure the center's future for years to come. After the speeches and celebrations wound down, Lena found herself drawn to the paddock. The evening air was cool and sweet with the scent of hay. Bella lifted her head in greeting as Lena approached, her eyes soft and knowing. Hope trotted over, her movements confident and graceful, so different from her shaky first steps. Standing there, watching mother and daughter in the fading light, Lena felt the weight of her journey settle into place. Her desperate chase for glory had nearly cost her everything, but it had also led her here, to this moment of perfect understanding. Hope stretched her neck over the fence, nudging Lena's shoulder playfully, asking for attention. Lena laughed, reaching up to stroke the foal's velvet nose, marveling at how this small life had helped reshape her entire world. If you enjoyed the story of Bella, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.